There is some information below or underneath this video. Just going to go have a look at that. Publication date 1910, Old Testament criticism, interpretation, etc. Bible, Old Testament, Bible and Science. And it's got 301 pages, 11 pages of plates, 19 centimeters, 6 lectures for elementary school teachers delivered by order of the Ministry of Public Worship and Education of Saxony. Includes index, errata inserted. Part 1, results based upon the excavations. Part 2, results based upon literary criticism. Part 3, results upon historical, religious and general research. Okay, we don't know what this is, so just blot it out. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the book, expand it so you can read along with us on the screen. But first, you're probably wondering, who is Rudolf Kittel and who was his son? Gerhard Kittel. First, Rudolf. Not much information on him, but he was born 28th of March 1853 in Eningen, Württemberg. 20 October 1929, Leipzig. Was a German Old Testament scholar. Kittel studied at University of Tübingen, 1871 to 76. He was a professor of Old Testament studies at the Universities of Breslau, 1888 to 98, and Leipzig, 1898 to 1923. In 1917, he was appointed rector at the University of Leipzig. What's a rector? A senior official in an educational institution, and can refer to an official in either a university or a secondary school outside the English-speaking world. The rector is often the most senior official in a university. Well, it's different in the United States. He was appointed rector at the University of Leipzig. He produced commentaries and histories of the Israelites in the Near East, but his most enduring work was his critical edition of the Hebrew scriptures, Biblia Hebraica, and that refers primarily to the three editions of the Hebrew Bible edited by Rudolf Kittel. When referenced, Kittel's Biblia Hebraica is usually abbreviated BH or BHK, K for Kittel. When specific editions are referred to BH1, BH2, etc. Okay, the Biblia Hebraica, which has remained a standard text. Kittel's son was a theologian and Nazi apologist. Okay, he was pro the National Socialism, the ideas, etc. Gerhard Kittel is a German Lutheran theologian and lexicographer of biblical languages. He was an enthusiastic supporter of the Nazis and an open anti-Semite. He is known in the fields of biblical studies for his theologisches Wörterbuch zum Neuen Testament. Something along those lines. There's his literary work, his references, and external links. And his son, Gerhard, born 23rd September 1888, died 11 July 1948. He was a German Lutheran theologian and lexicographer. Lutheranism is a major part of Protestantism. Theologian, study of religious belief from a religious perspective, and lexicographer, study of lexicons. Yeah, that's right, we see lexicons, not leprechauns. It is divided into two separate academic disciplines. It is the art of compiling dictionaries. Practical lexicography is the art of craft of compiling, writing and editing dictionaries. He is known in the field of biblical studies for his book on the New Testament, Theological Dictionary of the New Testament. His biography: on May 3rd, 1945, after Adolf Hitler's Third Reich capitulated to the Allies, Kittel was arrested by the French occupying forces. He was subsequently removed from office and interned at Balingen. In his own defense, Kittel maintained his work was scientific in method and motivated by Christianity, although it may have appeared anti-Semitic to some. He attempted to distinguish his work from the vulgar anti-Semitism of Nazi propaganda like Der Stürmer and Alfred Rosenberg, who was known for his anti-Christian rhetoric. The Stürmer, was it like a storm or something? It was a weekly German tabloid format newspaper published from 1923 to the end of World War II by Julius Streicher, the Gauleiter of Franconia, with brief suspensions in publication due to legal difficulties. Maybe it played a significant part in that time. Who was Alfred Rosenberg? A Baltic German Nazi theorist and ideologue. Rosenberg was first introduced to Adolf Hitler by Dietrich Eckart, and he held several important posts in the Nazi government. He was the head of the NSDAP office, so that's the National Socialist Deutsch, probably German something party, Aryan party or something. We're not really sure what that is. Who was known for his anti-Christian rhetoric. Volkskirche, yeah, it's the people's movement, right? Because folk is the people, right? The Volkskirche movement was a German ethnic nationalist movement active from the late 19th century to the dissolution of the German Reich in 1945, with remnants in the Federal Republic of Germany afterwards. And you see a pamphlet there. Okay, their arguments and emphasis on Lebensraum, a German concept of expansion, and Volkskirche nationalism, the philosophy of policies of which we come to German politics from the 1890s to the 1940s, etc. First popularised around 1901. Yeah. Kittel characterised his work as an attempt to grapple with the problem of Jewry and Jewish Christian. Martin Debelius, a theologian at Heidelberg, wrote that Kittel's work related to ancient Judaism are of purely scientific character and do not serve the party interpretation of Judaism. He said further that Kittel deserves the thanks of all who are interested in the scientific study of Judaism. Klaus Schedel, who attended Kittel's lectures on the Jewish Christian, referred to as the Jewish problem, was a wide-ranging debate in 19th and 20th century Europe that pertained to the appropriate status and treatment of Jews. The debate, which was similar to other national questions, and that dealt with certain things that came to the attention in the winter of 1941 to 42 in Vienna, said that one heard not a single word of malice, and that Professor Kittel truly did not collaborate. Schedel says that Kittel was one of very few scholars who promoted an opinion on the Jewish question other than the official one. The problem and how they're going to rid themselves of Germany of them. Kittel himself said his goal was to combat the myths and distortions of extremist members of the Nazi Party. Annemarie Tugendhat was a Christian Jew whose father had been taken to the concentration camp Welsheim in 1938. She testified that Kittel had strongly objected against the actions being taken against Jews. Kittel's work on the Jewish question was not based on the racial theories of Nazism, but upon theology. They're basically trying to get the Jew out of the Bible. In 1946, Kittel was released pending his trial, but was forbidden to enter Tübingen until 1948. From 1946 to 48, he was a pastor, Seelsorger, in Beuron. In 1948, he was allowed back into Tübingen, but died that year before the criminal proceedings against him could be resumed. He died on 11th of July 1948. Nazi Germany. A professor of evangelical theology and New Testament at the University of Tübingen, he published studies depicting the Jewish people as a historical enemy of Germany, Christianity and European culture in general. In a lecture of June 1933, Die Judenfrage, the Jewish question, that soon appeared in print, he spoke for the stripping of citizenship from German Jews, their removal from medicine, law, teaching and journalism, and to forbid marriage or sexual relations with non-Jews, thus anticipating by 2 years the Nazi government which introduced its Nuremberg racial laws and took away Jewish rights of German citizenship in 1935. A close friend of Walter Frank, Kittel joined Frank's Reichsinstitut für it's some sort of institute for non-Germans or something like that. Upon its foundation, Institute for New Germany, or for New Germans or something. No, they'll be Deutschlanders, so it must be something like that. Yeah. Upon its foundation in 1935, within this institute, he was attached to Forschung zur Teilung Judenfrage. From 1940 to 1943, Kittel held an evangelical theology chair at the University of Vienna. He was replaced at the University of Tübingen by Otto Michael, 1983 to 1993. In March 1943, Kittel suddenly returned to Tübingen to reclaim his theology. To reclaim his theology chair at its university, while still holding his chair at the University of Vienna. This forced Michael to be drafted into the Wehrmacht. It's the German infantry. Looks like a war machine. Wehrmacht, not too sure on that one. As a lowly private, and caused him traumatic humiliations. See Otto Michael Anpassung oder Widerstand, eine Autobiografie. Wuppertal and Zurich, Bruckhaus Verlag, 1989, paragraph 88-98. William F. Albright wrote, in view of the terrible viciousness of his attacks on Judaism and the Jews, he's talking about Kittel, which continues at least until 1943, where Gerhard Kittel must bear the guilt of having contributed more, perhaps than any other Christian theologian, to the mass murder of Jews by Nazis. So the nasty dad and son combination, right? His literary works. See also Walter Grundmann, a German Protestant theologian and anti-Semitic Nazi and Stasi collaborateur during the Third Reich and GDR. Grundmann served both German dictatorships. He was a member of the Nazi Party from 1930 onwards, and from 1933, etc. Footnotes, bibliography, further reading, and external links. Gerhard Kittel by Textus Receptus. Maybe it's meant to be Textus Receptus by him. Okay, so yeah, they were a nasty father and son combo, right? So we're going to go back to the book. The Scientific Study of the Old Testament, its principal results and their bearing upon religious instruction, by Dr. Rudolf Kittel, Professor at the University of Leipzig, Germany, translated by J. Caleb Hughes, MA, PhD, with 11 plates and sketches and text, published in 1910. Okay, we'll get back and have a look at that picture. Hammurabi and the Sun God, and then you got the text of the code, apparently below it, somewhere, maybe down here, not too sure. Six lectures for elementary school teachers delivered by order of the Ministry of Public Worship and Education of Saxony. Preface. This will be Kittel, I guess. Preface. When I was asked some months ago, in his era, by the Ministry of Public Worship and Education for the Kingdom of Saxony, where he was willing to deliver a course of 6 lectures to elementary school teachers on the subject of the authentic results of Old Testament research, congratulating the authorities upon their readiness to arrange educational courses dealing with the results of theological science. He assured them that he regarded it as his obvious duty, and so important a matter, to place all his knowledge and experience at their disposal, or at their use. Do what they will with it. He's willing. The reasons which induced the government to make such a proposal need hardly be explained. The question of religious instruction in schools, particularly in the elementary schools, had become a burning one all over Germany. They, in the Kingdom of Saxony, were reorganizing their elementary school systems. The almost unanimous demand of the teaching profession for some time past had been seen that religious instruction should harmonize with the authentic results of scientific research. The government, to meet this demand, could not do better than to invite the recognised advocates of the scientific research in question to declare the existence and extent of such results. On account of its importance to religious instruction in the elementary schools, biblical research naturally claimed the first consideration. Since the elementary school teachers were, in virtue of their profession, religious instructors also, it was but natural that the government should wish their lectures to be delivered to them. As long as the elementary school authorities regarded the religious instruction of youth as their most important task, and particularly while they entrusted this instruction throughout the school to the teachers, as was done in Saxony, differing in this respect from the other German states, it was certainly their duty to take care that the teachers keep abreast with the advance of religious thought. They'd keep up to date with it. Don't lag behind. Religious knowledge, like every other knowledge, insofar as it was related to the exact sciences, like historical research and natural science, etc., is progressive. It is subject to continual changes in its positive conceptions, in its more perfect expressions or its more suitable formulations. To observe this progress and keep in touch with it is the principal task of those whose vocation it is to instruct youth in the knowledge of religious matters. These lectures were easily understood and did not require a knowledge of the Hebrew language. Originally they were not intended for publication, but merely to be delivered to about 70 teachers, successful as religious instructors in elementary schools, among them being 3 female teachers, who were summoned by the government for this purpose. While delivering them at the local university college towards the close of September 1909, Kittel's audience expressed a wish, which was repeated at the end of the course, to have the lectures published and thus enable them to study them further, and at the same time give an opportunity to those teachers who were either unable to be present or had not been summoned, who nevertheless had evinced a keen interest in them, to read the lectures. Kittel's chief objection against doing this was that he had not confined himself to notes, for the discourses, although carefully prepared, were, strictly speaking, not lectures. When, however, through the kindness of a few zealous hearers, a written report of each lecture was placed at his disposal. In response to this friendly participation, Kittel could not but feel that it was his duty to reconstruct the lectures for publication. Naturally, these reports required a thorough revision, as well as to be supplemented from his own memory. It was to be hoped that those who heard the lectures would have found them essentially reproduced in this book. He had arranged them in exactly the same form as they would be if he had to deliver them again. At the close of each lecture, questions bearing on the subject were asked by those present. The answers to these often gave opportunities to further elucidate what had been said in the lecture. Thinking that they might occur to the reader, he included in this book his answers to some of those questions which seemed to be of special interest. Some of the sketches shown during the lectures are also included and will probably be welcomed by the reader as they were by the hearer. May these lectures be found a useful contribution to the solution of the great and important problems which confront our state schools, and with them the German and Christian schools generally. Kittel, Leipzig, November 1909. Contents page. Results based upon excavations. Content page continue. And this page here. List of illustrations. Hammurabi and the Sun God. Sacred Tree in Modern Palestine. More list of illustrations. The Royal Seal of King Jeroboam of Israel. The Scientific Study of the Old Testament, Chapter 1. Results based upon the excavations. Before we begin to discuss the most important authentic results of modern Old Testament research, it is perhaps advisable to consider a not unimportant question, the significance of which, Kittel feared, was not fully apprehended or understood by many people who are interested in the advance of thought in the fields of Old Testament study. The question is what exactly do we mean by authentic results? What idea does this expression convey to our minds? The question is not concerned with concrete facts or established facts, such as the historicity historicity of this or that event. We shall, or here consider those matters later, he stated. Here they confine themselves to the abstract question of scientific method. In what sense they expected authentic results in biblical, particularly Old Testament research, he was asking. Do these results possess absolute or only relative certainty? Are all those results which we ourselves are convinced to be, in a general sense, authentic, to be regarded as absolutely certain? Or are there degrees of certainty which we, to be strict, must carefully distinguish between? The latter proposition was certainly the correct one to make, he felt. A certainty of the first degree was based upon documentary evidence, or is based upon documentary evidence, insofar as it deserves this name in its strictest meaning, whether found in the Bible or in inscriptions, clay tablets and papyri, etc., and insofar as they themselves give irrefutable information. Kittel makes this restriction because even an excellent and taken generally a thoroughly credible record can contain information and expressions which are not clear, at least are no longer intelligible to us today. From a document of this kind we can obtain a certainty of the first degree, assured facts and abiding results in the general historical sense. Beside this certainty we also have one of the second degree. There are documents which, although otherwise excellent, are not entirely free from ambiguity, or have come down to us in fragments, essential parts having been lost. When we have such a document, the need for the interpretation of doubtful passages and the completing of the whole, supplementing the missing fragments from other sources, and thus connecting it with what is already known, compels us to introduce some element of subjectivity and to rely upon our own individual consideration of what we regard as probabilities. Obviously, results obtained in this way cannot be so trustworthy as in the first case. Instead of real historical truth, we possess now but a likely probability, which to the compiler, and perhaps to competent critics as well, may be deemed equivalent to a certainty, so that the critics feel justified in speaking of it as an authentic result, though strictly speaking it is only a well-likely probability which has the support of well-known scholars, but is liable to be overthrown by further research. It is therefore a certainty of the second degree. The example cited is only one of many. If the document itself is not of the first kind, but only of the second, for example, is not the work of the principal characters mentioned in it or of their contemporaries, but is the product of a later period than that reflected in the document, then it obviously can give us only a certainty of the second degree. Or, if the document itself is of the first kind, but is used to explain earlier events than those mentioned in it, we can describe such inferences as absolute certainties only when their conclusions, as such, are legitimate and decisive. In every other case they are but certainties of the second or even of the third degree. There is also a certainty of the third degree. Besides documents of the first and second classes, we find records of the third class which belong, relatively speaking, to a period far remote from the events which they described, but which are, on the whole, well informed thereof and contain valuable matter for consideration. And in addition to conclusive inferences, or such as may be regarded as very probable, which are inferred from facts, there are others of a higher degree of probability, of a very high degree of probability down to degrees of more or less reliable possibility. Much of what belongs to this classification bears the stamp of subjectivity and depends largely upon the individual convictions of the investigator himself. It is here that the indispensable hypothesis, for example a presupposition based upon something that is already known, has its place, which is used in all scientific research, biblical and otherwise, when a certainty of the first degree is not at our disposal. In the use and exploitation of the documents, the power of discrimination, imagination and intuition naturally plays a leading part. In this way, the hypothesis is formed. To condemn this practice would be folly. It is indispensable and it is everywhere, if kept within certain limits, a valuable scientific expedient. But it obviously can only give us a certainty of the third degree, or under favourable conditions of the second. However, by means of it we can, under certain circumstances, attain an assured result in the wider sense of the term. There are hypotheses hypothesis. The Copernican theory is only a hypothesis, which, in the course of time, have attained so high a degree of probability that they are regarded as absolute facts, and are applied by science as though they were axioms. This is a shortened form of procedure, a simplified use of language which is perfectly intelligible to the initiated, but rather dangerous when used by the masses. Notwithstanding this fact, the public speakers and writers make use of it even when addressing popular assemblies, although it would be more correct to differentiate between what is really authentic and what is based upon hypothesis, because every hypothesis has not attained the rank of the Copernican. In biblical science, there are, besides those which are universally accepted, assumptions which are confidently upheld only by their proposer and his narrow circle of followers, and in addition to those which are the abiding property of the science, there are others which have had or will have but a short existence. It will be seen, therefore, how essential it is when the authentic results of Old Testament criticism are under consideration, to consider first of all the question as to what is the nature of the scientific certainty in this particular connection. It is only when this question has been satisfactorily answered that the ground is sufficiently prepared for further advance. It shows also how easy it is in this, as in every other branch of science, when addressing the public, to speak generally of authentic results, when really the certainty is not always of the same degree. Okay, he carries on. In this field of research, several late discoveries have been made which have marvellously helped us to a clearer understanding of the Old Testament.